Well, good afternoon, reading 521 folks. I am going to try to create a short video here to help you understand the format of the case study that I know you're all working on. I wanted to show you two documents side by side. Number one, you should, hopefully, if I'm doing this correctly, you should see on the left-hand side the case study assignment. I had hoped to lay it out similar to the format that I'd want you to use, but I've created a second document, which you will see on the right-hand side of your screen. I've tried to split both into this one visual that you're seeing that is going to give you more of the formal format on actually presenting that information. So I want to try to describe how they go together. The first thing I want you to recognize is that when I prepare things, whether it's a presentation, a class, a research paper. It's a general format that I use. It's called the adaptive action cycle. And it's used a lot in research, a lot for inquiry, and it really answers three very simple questions. And then you break them down. And it's what, so what, and now what? So in the first part of your paper, you're going to identify the what. What is it that this paper is all about? What is the purpose of your study? What are the people or who are the participants in your study? What are your methods for being able to present the info that you use to create the intervention in your study? And then and by doing that, you're also embedding your so what. You have a what, you have a problem, you have a student who has a reading problem. What was the problem? And that's where you will put in this section called the purpose of the case study. Then the so what really becomes the methods. The student had a need for intervention, so I came up with an intervention plan. This is it. These were my methods for researching how the student would respond to these methods. And then the so what is also in where you describe your results. What were the outcomes of these particular steps? And then finally, the what, now what? The now what is really the discussion. This is where you move into beyond. I found all this out. Now I'm going to describe my conclusions more specifically, and this is your opportunity to get into more of the literature and the research that supports the reasons and the things that you were doing, or what you might find, maybe it's the what would be next in the recommendations next. So let me go, that's just generally an overview. Let's go back to this left-hand screen again. And if you'll recall, the case study asked for, let's go back to the top. You had to identify your student and your student profile. So if you look on the right-hand side, I start with an introduction. So in your introduction, you're going to provide an overview of what this whole study is about. You've conducted the study, now you're introducing it. It sometimes seems a little repetitive, but you do need to summarize what this paper is going to be. Okay, you don't have to spill all the beans, but create an introduction. Following your introduction, you need to state the purposes of your case study. This is often followed by the research question. Maybe because at this level, I'm not asking you to do a formal case study as if you were writing an article or something for a doctoral course. So I've modified this just a little bit to fit our needs and the type of instruction that you may or may not have had in the master's program. So in this case, you might have a hypothesis. It's not a formal hypothesis. It's fine. Maybe you didn't even have a formal research question. However, I recommend that most anything that you are thinking is an inquiry. You're thinking, gosh, this student was struggling with prosody, so therefore I chose to do this. This student had comprehension concerns, so I implemented so many sessions of discussion and had a particular comprehension strategy that I wanted to be able to work with. So my hypothesis is he or she will respond in such and such a way because of the types of things that I was going to do. So this is your opportunity to present the purpose for this study, which of course I think you already know, but it's beyond, this was an assignment and I had to do it. This is really more in an academic framework, and you're literacy leader, so you're framing everything from the perspective of being of talking to other literacy educators and how your work will help them become better teachers as well. And you're informing that general body of stakeholders. So in this next so then I'm sorry, I got to get my cursor in the right place. So then this talks about the student profile and background information. So here you get to have a whole section devoted to the participant. In this study, in this section, you're going to provide us with a profile of the student, the background information. This is where you get to paint a picture of the student, give as much detail as you can and information that you have collected to help us know who this person is and understand who you were working with at the time. And then you move into the methods. So you already described what the problem was, and then you told us who you're going to work with. Well, now tell us a little bit about how you're addressing the needs of this particular student that you just addressed. What were the literacy challenges? How did you find out those were the literacy challenges? What data did you collect? What did you find? And in many cases, it's coming from the teacher that you are working with, or you borrowed the student from. You can describe all of that. That tells us a little bit about the methods that you use to create your intervention plan. This is also where you're going to describe your intervention plan. How did you assess? Over here, it talks on the left-hand side about assessment and evaluation. How did you assess the student? How did you evaluate before, during, and after? What was your intervention plan? How did you implement this intervention plan? How did you monitor this person's progress? How many times did you meet? Where did you meet? Give us all the nitty-gritty details so we can visualize all of this narrative form. So we want the story of what you did in this particular study. Paint a picture of your participant, paint a picture of the problem, paint a picture of the methods that you use to work and gather information and work to improve this literacy concern base for this particular student. And then you move into the next section, which of course are the results. So here, now what happened? What did you find? Describe your findings. What happened as a result of your intervention, and give us all of the information that you can to inform us on. You're not evaluating yourself or the results. We're not evaluating anyone. You're really telling us what happened in this study so that we will know. You're describing your findings. Sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're negative, because in this next, and I notice over here, I was just going back, and it says your reflection and adjustment and conclusions. These two sections really get divided into your conclusion and your discussion. So I tried to write some ideas up here to help you think about what to say in these sections. So based on these results, these were my conclusions about this strategy, this student, this progress, this plan, etc. Now, the next thing I want you to think about is the discussion. And this gets a little bit more tricky, but this is where you really get into the academic piece of you as being a literacy leader, a literacy expert. This is where you're going to go back into literature that you've read in the course, from the books that you've read, things that you've learned on your own, any other kind of research that you found. This is where you get to show that you have progressed as an educator. I noticed that some of the questions that we had, or the interventions that I read on earlier, were based on things that may not have been connected to anything in the course. I think it would behoove you to connect whatever it is, the decisions that you have made, to new learning and things that address, make yourself sound knowledgeable and educated. So this is a good time for you to include citations and references from the materials. It's a good time for you to try to add some research that you may have done to support your case on your work. And this is also a time where you kind of wrap it all up. This is your discussion. You're talking about this study. So you're writing your conclusions where you summarize your key findings. So it's the closing to that introduction, but you're going a little bit up beyond that because you're also generalizing your work to others. So other students with a similar situation or a larger population of students or teachers or other stakeholders like parents, um, literacy coaches, administrators, anyone that would have any stake in teaching reading, particularly in the context of the question and the issue that you were addressing. And you can also discuss here, well, how did this answer your research question or your hypothesis? So this tends to be longer than a small concluding paragraph. This is a little bit of showing the meat and it legitimizes you as the researcher as you pull this fact-finding mission that you went on with this intervention program. So here's some tips that I have tried to add. Use quotes, citations, and references. Citations, when I mean that, those are things that are embedded in the text where you put things in parentheses. References is, of course, the list of references that you use within those citations because you have to put the longer reference at the end of the page. Use quotes from the literature to support your case in your discussion. One thing to note is I did not ask you to do a literature review. Now, that's a big, huge piece. I did not ask you to do that because I thought that that would be a little bit over the top for this particular level. It's definitely something that goes into published case studies, and it's definitely something that we do at the doctoral level. But I took that, I modified it and took that section out. But this, I want you to show your knowledge in the discussion section to support or contest what you have found in this particular from this case study. Show your learning and use that section to also, and then make recommendations for other people who might want to replicate this study. Do this again for future students or for teachers or again, there's a fine line between what goes in the discussion and the recommendation. So you as a writer have to decide where you're going to put the pieces for this outline. So these are just thoughts to include in these different sections. I'm going to tell you where I got all of this too. So include quotes, citations, references to support your work or the choices that you made. You chose an intervention plan for a reason. Why did you choose to do specifically that? And what research supports the work, the choices that you make? Or did you just think it up because you thought it was a good idea? Well, you have to have your work founded in something. And we know that evidence-based learning and teaching and instruction is the thing. It's something that's the science that goes with the science of teaching reading, or if the science, not specifically the science of teaching reading as we are hearing it in one context, but that's just good research. It's evidence-based. Well, you have evidence. So show where you are, show your clout, represent yourself well. So I talk about using quotes, citations, and references. You don't have to just keep it to the discussion section. You can include it anywhere else. You can include it a lot of times in that introduction, we start with something that quotes the problem or appear in this particular area. You don't have a lot of researchy quotes in the participant and findings section because that's coming strictly from the case study itself. But the other parts are tying into research-based methods, findings, information, knowledge that you are going to share and embed in your work. And then the second tip is the visuals. Lots of visuals are key. I mean, they're really great and they help your reader understand your story. So you can include tables and charts and quotes from your participants or people that you talk to, maybe a quote from a parent or a quote from the teacher that you work with on this alongside with the student. Anything that helps to support and substantiate the work that you're doing and make it easier and more visual for us to be able to understand. So I hope that was useful. I said I'd tell you where the source comes from. When in doubt, there's so many references and tools online, and I've done my own set of my whole dissertation was a case study, but it's has many more elaborate parts. And as I said, I left out a key point in your work, which is that literature review. But notice up here, the Owl Purdue is a huge, very reputable source for formatting our work in APA format. So I use this as a guide to help me come up with the guidelines that you can use to help format your paper. So these bold headings are pretty much the sections you want to do, and then you fill in the description and paint a picture of what you did during your time and what you've learned and what do you recommend for us moving forward, and why was this important? Why was this work important to the field and to other stakeholders? So let me know if you can go to the Owl Purdue site. I can see that this one isn't Owl Purdue specifically, and it's going to give you a lot more. You can go, there's the actual site, and you can do all kinds of searching in here when you're trying to figure out specifics on the formatting. If you have more questions, please reach out to me, and I'll be happy to have a more specific conversation with you if I did not address something in this particular discussion. I hope you all have a very happy Easter. It's Good Friday. I hope you're taking some time for yourselves, your spirits, your hearts, and your families. Wishing you a wonderful spring and moving forward and end of semester. Happy Easter to you all. Bye-bye.